Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I hope everyone is having a great day so far, and I trust that each of you have gotten a lot of helpful information from this morning's session. I know I just got a lot of helpful information from my good friend Sonia. Alanis, thank you very much for inviting us here. My name is Calvin Anderson, not Mayor Wharton, from your program. I'm Senior Vice President with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Tennessee, and we're very pleased to be a sponsor of the Boom Conference. We know that you are a vital part of the Memphis economy and that this conference is here to help you thrive to grow your business. Blue Cross Blue Shield is a partner with over 3.1 million Tennesseans in their physical health across the state. Blue Cross is marking its 70th year in business in the state of Tennessee as the leading health insurer. We have a tremendous positive impact on the economy in Memphis and across the state. As a Tennessee business, we're also interested in the health and the economic health of our state. And we are committed to working with hundreds of other Tennessee businesses like yours as vendors and suppliers. We are intentionally inclusive in working with suppliers, and last year spent nearly $100 million with minority-owned, women-owned, and veteran-owned businesses across the state of Tennessee. That figure represents nearly a quarter of our supplier spend. And in Memphis this year thus far, we've spent close to $2.5 million with local and small minority-owned businesses. So each of you are working on growing your dream every day, and we at Blue Cross are pleased to join with you in that endeavor. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Many people consider the kitchen to be the heart of the home. You know everybody likes to hang out in the kitchen, right? It's the place where meals are prepared, or at least for me, where they're ordered and delivered. Oh, no, just and can symbolize a need to be fed either in body, mind, or spirit. Dream interpretation experts say cooking can be a metaphor for the alchemy or the changing of one substance into another. Therefore, the kitchen may symbolize creative endeavors or can indicate undergoing a spiritual process. Lisa Price is a living example of using a kitchen for creative endeavors. In the early 1990s, she had a day job as part of the production team on the television program The Cosby Show. Did you know that? But her hobby, now think about this, but her hobby and passion, you hear the word passion? Had always been fragrances and perfume sprays. In the kitchen of her Brooklyn apartment, which she shares with her husband Gordon and their 3 kids, she would add oils to unscented lotions and begin learning about aromatherapy and the various healing processes of oils. This was a passion of hers. So with a $100 investment, did you hear what I just said? Did I say 100 million? Say no, Rose. Did I even say 1 million?
No.
Did I even say 1,000?
No, Rose.
What did I say? With a $100 investment and her kitchen, Lisa Price started building a collection of what would become a beauty revolution. Named for her mother, Carol's daughter grew from a homespun beauty product line sold from her living room and flea markets to a booming enterprise with products sold on the Home Shopping Network, at Target, in addition to 2 brick stores. She had her own 2 stores. Here are some of her customers. Such notables as Jada Pinkett Smith, Halle Berry, Erykah Badu, Jay-Z, Mary J. Blige, and Rosie Perez. Her customers enjoy unique products such as Love Butter, Hair Milk, Black Vanilla Hair Smoothie, and lemon mint manicure. You want to eat that too, in addition to putting it on your body, don't you? The winner of numerous entrepreneur awards, she is also the author of Success Never Smells So Sweet, a memoir that chronicles her transformation from a young black woman in debt and burdened by low self-esteem. We can relate to that, can't we? Especially in debt part, right? I know some of you hadn't had that problem, all right. To a multi-million-dollar business. Now that's a transformation that deserves a hand of applause. Lisa, doesn't mean there's hope for me yet, right? All right. Lisa knows firsthand the creative power that can come from a kitchen. What can be created in the kitchen? Mario Batella once said, "The kitchen is really the castle itself. This is where we spend our happiest moments and where we find the joy of being a family." For Lisa, the kitchen is where she found the joy of following her dreams and created products to help thousands of women enhance their own natural beauty. We are very proud of our guest speaker today, Miss Lisa Price.
Okay, this luncheon started off with the best prayer I think I've ever heard in my life. Giving thanks to the creator of cottages and conglomerates. That's a tweet, I'm sorry. That was amazing, thank you. And that's one of the best introductions that I have ever had, to have that analogy made to the kitchen. I'm like gonna tear up, thank you. That was beautiful. Good afternoon. I am very, very proud to be here, because before I made it up to the stage, I met so many people who shared with me that what I have done has inspired them, what I have done continues to inspire them, what I have done makes them think about doing different things, and that is the biggest blessing of all. It's not so much the success or the accolades that one receives in doing their business, but knowing that you have an impact and that there are more people that are going to follow behind you and with you and stand beside you is what makes all of this important. We have to build more and more within our community, and if we can be inspirations to one another, then I think we're all doing what we're supposed to do. Carol's daughter did start in my kitchen. At the time that it started, I did have a husband, but I didn't have the children yet. They came along with the business growing, so I currently do have 3 children, a 19-year-old, a 17-year-old, and an 8-year-old. My boys are the 2 oldest, Forrest and Ennis, and they watched the business really grow from the very early stages. They grew up with people living in the house with them, because I worked out of my home for so long and had employees working in my home. So they knew what it was like to kind of live in a fishbowl and have all of these other ladies around. And they knew what it was like to see their mom work. My daughter came along later. She's only 8. And she has the experience of seeing her mom work, but she sees her mom travel and go away. And I always wondered, you know, what perspective she would have on things, and hope that she understood why I went where I went and why I do what I do. And I found out recently that someone had said to her, "So what do you think about your mom traveling?" And she says, "Well, it's okay. I just don't like it all the time because I get left in the house with all the boys and I'm the only girl." And you know, so they said, "Well, do you understand why your mom does what she does?" And she said, "Well, I know she goes away to make money, so I guess it's okay." So I think I need to bring her to a couple events like this so she could see that, you know, sometimes it's talking, sometimes it's encouraging, sometimes it's teaching. She equates me going away with going on HSN and selling. But it is a a very wonderful thing for those of us in the audience that are entrepreneurs. It's not a job, and it's not just a business. It's very much our lives. And it's very hard to separate them. And I think we tend to think that that's a bad thing, that we can't separate business from life, and we're kind of always working. But it actually isn't a bad thing. I've been doing it for 22 years, and I do know how to take a vacation. I do know how to take a break. I do know how to unplug. But when you're an entrepreneur, your life and your business become one many, many times. And you are your brand, and you have to live your brand, and you have to be your brand. You don't have to be on all the time, but you're always living your brand. You're always going to be your brand's best advocate. One of the questions that I get asked a lot is, where'd the name come from? Perfect timing. I did not time that, I swear. That's Mommy. That's Carol. I am Carol's daughter. My mother's name was Carol, and I am her daughter. And when I needed to name the company, I worked for a boss at the time who, when he was thinking of a name for a project, he would list the goals of the project and then the things that the project was going to be about. And I thought, okay, that's a good idea. Let me try and do that. Because then I figured I would either affirm something already positive about me, or I would call into being something that I want to come to fruition. So one of the things that I was Carol's daughter. At the time, I was also Gordon's girlfriend and Hank's secretary, and I was also Robert's daughter. But there was something about when I said Carol's daughter that it just sort of, you know, you just got that feeling, you know, that thing, and you're like, I think that's it. And I'm so grateful that I went with that gut feeling and went with that name. One, because 22 years later, it was the first indication of gut that makes the correct business decision, and that happens many, many, many times over. But also because my mom left in 2003, left the physical plane when she passed away. And I had to learn how to be without her. And she was my best friend. And if anyone in the room has lost a mother, there's nothing like it, because she is the person that we're connected to because we're inside of her body. And she's the person that we need the most when we first are born, because she feeds us and she changes us. So you don't really know what life is like without her. You don't understand what that is. And when I lost her, I realized that I had to be my own cheerleader. My mother was the person who would remind me that I was blessed when I would go through difficult times with my business. I would call her and I'd say, Mommy, I don't even know how I'm gonna get these orders filled. So-and-so didn't come into work today. And you know, it's, you know, however many days before Christmas, and there's so much work that has to be done. And the first thing that my mother would say to me is, go get yourself a cup of tea. And I'd be like, Mommy, I'm trying to talk to you about serious stuff here. Yeah, go get yourself a cup of tea. And this is being done over the phone, because we always talked over the phone. Towards the end of my mom's life, mobility was challenging for her. She had to walk with a walker, and we didn't live far from each other, but we didn't live in each other's houses, but we talked like 8 times a day, so we were always on the phone. So I would go get the cup of tea, I would come back to the phone, call her again, and it took me a while to realize the method to her madness. Going and getting the cup of tea and sitting down, you kind of exhale, you know, you focus on the tea. Wow, this mint tastes really good. And all of a sudden you're relaxed and you can think clearer. And then my mother would have a strategy for how the work was going to get done. She also would not let me wallow in negativity. So when I was complaining about things, complaining about having orders to fill, she would say, well, do you know how difficult it would be if you didn't have the orders? And my mother was not a business person at all. And I would be like, well, what do you mean? And she said, well, wouldn't it be harder to go out and drum up the business. You have the business. You just have to figure out how to get the work done. I think the hard part is done already. And she was right. And when my mom was gone, I realized that I was going to have to do all of those things for myself because I couldn't rely on our phone calls to get that done. And it is the best lesson that I think I've learned from her and that I pass on to my children and to the people who work for me, and it is the thing that I always remember. So being able to go to work every day, see her face, see her name, tell her story over and over again, if I wasn't Carol's daughter, I wouldn't have the opportunity to do that. And so when I say go with your gut decisions, know that I know what I'm talking about. The other question that I often get asked is, how do you know when it is the right time to have employees? When you can't just get the work done on your own, how do you trust people to come in and do the job for you? Well, if you have been an employee, you have an idea of what they are like. Right? Some of us go to work and we do everything that we're supposed to do, and some of us go to work and watch the clock. So you have to know which type of person you're employing and which type of person that you need. So if you need someone who is going to come in and do the job, then make sure you hire that person. And if you were the person who watched the clock, you should be able to recognize yourself when they're sitting in front of you applying for a job and be like, oh, no, 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 no. I know you. Mm-mm. You won't always make the right decision, and that's okay, because life is not about being perfect. Life is about learning and growing and experiencing, and we don't learn, grow, or experience if everything is perfect. That's kind of boring. And I think when we think of going into business and being entrepreneurs, we think that we have to be perfect. We think we have to have it all figured out. We're not allowed to make mistakes. We're not allowed to have a down year. We're not allowed to fail. It happens. You will fail. I promise you, you will fail. You will be stressed out. You will not know how to make payroll. You will not know how to pay your bills. You won't know where next month's rent check is coming from. All of those things will happen. But it's okay, because it's life. And you pray, and you study, and you learn, and you get through it. My mother used to say, well, sweetheart, you're just gonna have to push. And I said, but Mommy, I am pushing. And she said, no, push. Pray until something happens. And so I push, and I push. And something always does happen. Somehow it figures itself out. Somehow you get to the other side. Somehow you find the money. But stop wallowing in the, why am I making these mistakes? Why is this happening? Why isn't it perfect? I don't know whose life is perfect. I really don't, because that's not what it's supposed to be about. Another question that I get asked is, how do you juggle it all? I'm sorry, they don't usually say juggle. How do you balance it all? Because you're a wife and a mother and a business owner, how do you do that? It took about 5 years of doing conferences for me to realize, oh, when I go to the conferences that are about women entrepreneurs and women empowerment, I get asked that question. But when I go to the conferences where most of the room are men, I don't ever get asked that question. And no one in the room ever asks another man that question, like, hey, how do you manage the meetings along with the play dates? It doesn't come up. And I realized, is that an extra pressure that perhaps we're putting on ourselves that we don't need to put on ourselves because we're trying to balance it all, when it isn't possible to balance it all? It isn't possible to do it all. You juggle it all. It's a juggling act every single day of the week. That is what it is. It is a juggling act. And the most important thing that I used to say when I first discovered this is, you got all of the balls in the air and you just try not to drop the baby. Because at the time, my 8-year-old was a baby. And you know, if the 10-year-old falls, You know, he'll be okay. He might have a little bruise, but but if you drop the baby, it's a problem. And it's just a metaphor for some little things are going to have to go, and you got to let them go. And you might drop a small thing, but try and keep the big things up in the air. Don't make yourself feel that doing it correctly means doing everything. What I've resolved myself to is there are a certain number of days where I'm going to be a wonderful wife and mother. And there are other days when I am an amazing founder and person who runs a company. And there's only a couple of those days where I'm actually going to do both jobs really, really well at the exact same time. So it's about that balance. And this is a perfect example. I left home last week Friday. And I get home tonight. So that's almost a week that I've been gone. And for me, that's a really long time. I usually go away 2-3 days at a time, not 6 days at a time. Is there stuff that I missed? Probably. You know, did somebody need me? Did my daughter get mad because mommy wasn't there and she was stuck with the boys? Probably. But when I go home, I can balance that out by giving her the attention that she needs, by checking on everyone, by reminding my husband how much I love him, because I know that I can leave our children and know that they're safe and cared for, and he handles so much when I'm not there. And that's how you have the balance. But stop trying to do it all, and after a while, we'll stop asking each other that question and be like the guys. And my personal theory is that the guys don't ask the question because they have wives. And every now and then I want a wife. I love my husband dearly, and he is an amazing man, and there is no shade being thrown at men, but wives, we do a lot of stuff. We are really, really good. And every now and then I'm like, boy, this would be so much easier if I had a wife. We're going to have time for question and answer, so I want to make sure that you're thinking of questions that you want to ask me, because there's no way in 25, 30 minutes that I'm able to address everything that has gone on in 22 years. So I think the next topic that I'll tackle is the fact that my company was acquired by another company. Is everybody aware of that? Yeah. Okay. In November of 2014, Carol's Daughter was acquired by L'Oreal USA. And that was, I was just asked this question in an interview before I came in here, what is the proudest moment of your life? And then another interview I had, someone asked, what was the saddest thing that has ever happened to you? And unfortunately, the acquisition with L'Oreal covered both of those topics. And this is the reason why. In order for a company to be acquired by a company like L'Oreal, you have to be in good financial standing. You have to be earning a certain minimum. You have to show that there is still room for you to grow, so that if they do purchase you, they can see growth coming to them in the long term. It also helps that we have a story to tell. It helps that we are in a burgeoning industry and have been there for 22 years, so we're an authority in the industry and still at the forefront of the industry. And then it helps to have the founder involved as well, who can story tell and be the face for the brand and is still there developing products and so forth. And what a lot of people seem to have the impression of is that once the company is purchased by another company, that everything about the company that was its soul, that was its DNA, that is what made it magical, just somehow disappears overnight and is eradicated. And there's a perception that it is the goal of the acquiring company, as if it is L'Oreal's goal, to eradicate everything about Carol's Daughter that has made people love it for 22 years. And that's the exact opposite. That's exactly why they're acquiring you, because you're well loved. So the last thing that they want to do is destroy who and what you are. The other assumption, which was the sad part of things, was that I was a sellout, that I don't care about my people at all, and these are things that were actually written to me on social media. What is it that you are teaching your children, and what kind of legacy are you leaving them by showing them that all it takes is a check to make you give up everything that you've built? So that's why it was the saddest moment, because I had spent all of this time building a business, and with the last 18 months before the deal happened, that level of work got to a place that I didn't even know I was capable of withstanding. One, because we were struggling. There were tough decisions that had to be made in order to preserve the business. And we had gone through a process of being sold. And when you go through a process of being sold, you sit down and you meet with potential, what's referred to as strategic partners, potential companies that would acquire your brand. And that process was happening because I had investors. I think a lot of people assumed that everything that I did on my own, even though the fact that we had investors was public knowledge. We started out with our smaller celebrity investment team, and then it grew to another investment company that had an equity stake in the brand. And when you have investors, you have to have an exit strategy. So you either have to write them a check that gives them what they invested plus what they expected to earn personally, or you have to go through an acquisition so that everyone gets paid. I personally didn't have that kind of money. If I did, I wouldn't have had investors. So my exit strategy was to sell, but I wanted to sell to a company that would recognize who we were and what we were about and understand what it was that we were doing. But the reality of the situation is that the investors that I had been in longer than they intended, and they actually had the right to sell me to whoever they wanted to. And you also have to go with who gives the best offer. So this is where faith and prayer and vision boarding and all of that came into play, because I knew early on who the best company was for us, even though I had to meet with 8 others. When we first went through the process, Carol's daughter was at a crossroads where we needed to decide what was going to be the best distribution for our brand. And we were, at that time, in Sephora, Macy's, Ulta, and HSN. And there were a lot of players who came along after us who were thriving in a little store called Target. And Target had actually approached Carol's daughter in 2010 and said, hey, we're going to revamp ethnic and we're going to call it multicultural, and we want you to be a part of that shift and that change. And we couldn't do it because managing our prestige business was something that we fully didn't have a grasp on, and to take on something else just wouldn't have been smart business. So we passed up on that opportunity. And that area continued to grow and thrive. And we were not a part of it. In the beauty business, you're actually not allowed to do what's called multi-channel distribution. You cannot be in prestige and be in mass at the same time, which doesn't really make sense to me, because if any of us open up our makeup bags and dump them out on the table, I guarantee you in one bag, you'll probably find a MAC something and a Maybelline something, or a Wet n Wild situation. Because women shop like that. I know men don't get it the same way. You don't shop for lip gloss, but you might have a product that comes from the drugstore for your hair, but then a cologne that comes from a department store. So we shop multi-channel. So I decided that I wasn't going to follow the rules. I have a broad line. I'm going to take part of my line and repackage it, and I'm going to go to Target because they still want me. And I'm going to keep the other part that's thriving in prestige and leave it in prestige. And that was a really big risk. And when we were originally talking to these strategic partners, the one who was most interested and the one who I wanted was L'Oreal. And L'Oreal was concerned not at what we were doing, because they thought what we were doing was a smart thing, but what the outcome would be. And their fear was, if we acquire prior to this channel change, and if for some reason it fails, it will look to the public as if L'Oreal destroyed the brand. And they didn't want to have that reputation for themselves or for me to have that reputation. So they stepped away from the process. So I was faced with, I know this is the right decision to do, but I'm risking everything. It could completely blow up in my face. I could lose all of my prestige business. I could possibly be too late to the game at Target, and everything that I've built over the last 20 years could go poof, up in smoke overnight. And in addition to that, I had 5 retail stores that were failing for the last 4 years, and at the end of 2013, had to make the decision to close those 5 stores, and in order to close those 5 stores, I had to file Chapter 11 to do it properly and strategically and to preserve the rest of the brand. So contrary to popular belief, I was not operating on fumes. I was not falling apart when L'Oreal acquired me. They wouldn't have acquired me if I was, but I did have to make that difficult decision. So we launch in Target. It's the best beauty launch that Target has ever had in the history of beauty launches. We took 9 points of share away from the leading competitor in the first 8 weeks of being in the store and became the #2 brand within the multicultural section. And we were able to preserve our prestige business in Ulta and on HSN. Sephora and Macy's let us go, which was fine. We figured that that would happen. But the Target business was much more profitable. So then L'Oreal came back, because of course they went away, but they were watching. And they saw what we were doing, and all of the conversation started again. So I had gone from this place of perceived weakness to terror, to fear, to being courageous, because even though I'm afraid, I still have to do this, to sitting in front of the people who walked away from me saying, "You proved us wrong. You did it. We actually didn't think that you could do it." The bankers who worked with us when we were going through the process to when L'Oreal came back, not even believing that they were looking at the books for the exact same company. And then we had the joy of going through due diligence. Does anybody know what due diligence is? Oh my goodness. I thought they were going to find out about the time that I kind of sort of smoked something when I was in high school that I wasn't supposed to. And yeah. It was absolutely amazing. And again, the hardest thing that I've ever been through, business-wise and emotionally, because you're going through this process, but it's a secret to everyone. No one knows that it's happening. You can't talk about it. And you still have to function in your everyday life and still do your business. So I might be on air on HSN being bubbly and bright and talking about what I'm selling and, hey, how you doing? And then run off from, from the show to deal with a bunch of emails about documents that they need and who's gonna track this down and where's this and where's that. So to get through all of that stuff, relaunching the brand in a new market, losing accounts with other stores, still being able to build cash flow, turning my EBITDA from negative $500,000 one year to plus $6.5 million the next year, okay? To do all of that, and not by myself, I have a team, we work together, but to do all of that, and then to get to the point where this is real, this is actually happening. And it was such a test of faith, because to prepare for it, you have to function as if it has happened. And what I mean by that is, There are press releases that have to be prepared, because when the decision is made that they're going to acquire you, legally, there's stuff that has to happen. So press announcements have to go out, you know, the video announcement has to go out, so all those things have to be prepared before you even know it's gonna happen. So I sort of felt like someone who was planning a really big wedding, and I wasn't sure if he was gonna show up. But I had to order the food and the flowers and get my hair done and get the dress and everything, and just pray that when I went to walk, he'd be there. And it was such, for me, on the spiritual side of things, such a wonderful thing, because I had to place myself in the moment as if it had happened. Like, I actually recorded the announcement 4 weeks before I even know if it's gonna happen. I had to say that it had happened. So when you think about the things that you want to do, and you think about the power of affirmation, just call it into being, even though it's not there yet. Just claim it. Because it works. And so I get to this point where I announce to my staff, this is what's happening today, 12 o'clock, the press releases are gonna go out. My staff is excited. Only 6 of us knew what was going on out of 40 of us, and we had to let everybody else know. Then I went to L'Oreal to meet staff there, and we're part of this large group now called the Multicultural Beauty Division. And I announced, you know, myself to them, and we drank champagne, and everybody was happy. I did a television interview, so by the time I got home and I sat down and took out the social media, it was 7 o'clock in the evening, and I am flying for the whole day. I'm proud, I'm happy, and then I read all of this gunk. And I did let it get to me, and I did let it make me cry. And I did feel bad, and it was a very interesting week. And coincidentally, that same week, we announced on Monday, Friday, I was in the Miami Arena in Miami, Florida, for Oprah's The Life I Want tour. And she has been my mentor in my head forever, forever. And I listened to her talk about her life and her failures and her successes. And she said that when she started OWN, it was difficult. They were losing advertisers, they didn't have the right programming, they were losing ratings, it was a mess, everybody was predicting her doom. And she said, and it was true, all of this stuff was going on, and I had lots of problems. And she said, and then one day, I was sitting under a tree in my yard, and I thought, I am a woman from the backwoods of Mississippi who wasn't supposed to be anything but a good maid. That's what her grandmother was teaching her to be, to work for some good white folks. And she said, and I own a television network. Who cares if it's messed up? I'll fix it. And I sat in that arena and felt like she was talking to me. I was like, oh my God, I did sell my company, but who cares? I got paid. My family has wealth for the first time ever. And it just flipped everything around, and so I had 4 days of feeling, and then Mama O got me right back to where I was supposed to be. And then my primary concern was going to my staff on Monday morning and making sure they understood that they were not a house that had just been flipped. I needed them to understand that they had worked at and built a company of value, and that regardless of what people think, L'Oreal does not write checks for things that are falling apart because they have the hopes of flipping it one day. They acquire assets to put into their portfolio, and we live in that portfolio along with Kiehl's and Yves Saint Laurent Beauty and L'Oreal Paris and Garnier and Maybelline and Essie and Soft Sheen Carson and Magic Shave. That's where we live. And that was the most important thing. So it was the proudest moment of my life, and for a little bit, one of the saddest in my business life. But I came through it. So I hope I didn't go over time. I'm good. Okay. So Q&A now. So I hope I was able to give you a glimpse into things, but if there's something that I didn't cover, do not be shy. I have answered every question you can possibly imagine, from what do you use on your hair, to how do you keep your marriage alive, to when should I get an investor. So don't be shy. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, thank you. I was going to say, is not one question? Yeah. Just, you can line up behind the microphone, and then it'll go quickly. We won't have to wait for you to walk up.
Lisa, can you talk about going from your apartment and selling from your apartment to your first retail location, some of the challenges you went through and the steps you had to overcome to get there?
Sure. So the first retail location that I ever sold to was a little store in Brooklyn that doesn't exist anymore. It was called Earth General. And that was an easy store to get into. They were small, independent. There was only one. They were a store that carried things that today we can find in our supermarket, like 7th generation toilet paper. You know, there was a time when nobody knew what that was. And so getting in there was just a matter of dropping off some samples, letting their clientele weigh in on how they felt about it, and then they made the decision to carry me. Later, I wanted to go to a more established health food store in Brooklyn, and in order to get into them, I had to have product liability insurance. And I was just talking to somebody about this today. They asked me the same question. I didn't know what that was. I had homeowners insurance, and I thought, well, is it covered in there? And it isn't. It's a completely different policy, but it was something that I probably should have had all along, but just didn't know about. And then once I found out about it, I got it. And later, when you do business with retailers like Target and Ulta, there are more legalities involved. Your trademarks have to be in line, because when you agree to do business with those retailers, you indemnify them from any issues. So your product liability insurance has to be in place. You have to own the trademarks on the things that you're advertising so that they don't get into any trouble because of you. You're the next question.
I have a question about your salon, Mirrors. So where is it at this point? I knew you had one in Atlanta, and I know that you had to close the
Yes.
Atlanta store. Are you still in New York?
Yes, we still have Mirror in Harlem in our flagship store, and we called it Mirror because we want you to look in the mirror and see who you are, and not have your hair care be a mystery, and not walk in just with a magazine and say, I want to look like this. Right. And the magazine is Halle Berry, and you're not. So let's look in the mirror and figure out what's the best plan for your hair.
And I guess my next question about Mirror is, what are your plans with it? Are you planning on just keeping the one store, or are you thinking about expanding or franchising? Or?
I'm not thinking about expanding or franchising right now. Okay. The hair care business, especially the salon business, is very interesting. It's in an interesting flux right now because there's so much DIY that's going on with people going on YouTube and figuring out how to do things even though they may be doing them incorrectly. But the one is good, especially since salons are not my proficiency.
Gotcha.
But L'Oreal has a lot more expertise in that area, so I'm sure it's something that we'll explore later.
Okay.
But it's sustaining itself, it's making money, and we have a regular clientele, and they're happy, and everybody likes looking in the mirror.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, I happen to have the pleasure of using some of the shampoo by way of my daughter. So you can't beat the smell of it. But one of the points I wanted you to kind of reiterate, because I didn't want it to be lost with this audience, is that when the original deal with L'Oreal didn't go through, maybe, and it wasn't the way you wanted it to go at the time, the importance of maintaining those relationships and not get caught up in that first deal, and understanding that, hey, the right deal might come later, in knowing that, just keeping a positive outlook on things and making sure that you don't burn bridges.
Oh, absolutely.
Can you reiterate
yes.
that?
When the first proposition did not follow through to an acquisition, I was fortunate that one of my champions within L'Oreal was able to get permission from her boss to stay in touch with me. That doesn't typically happen. And I told her, when she told me that, you know, we're not going to be able to do this, what I said to her was, I'm not speaking to you right now as a business person. I'm speaking to you as a person who just knows in her gut that we're going to work together. So if you're okay with it, I would like for us to be able to keep in touch. I won't ask you to do something for me or explain something to me that sort of breaks the protocol of the company, because technically we're competitors. And she said, no, I completely understand. I want you to succeed. And I have permission to stay in touch with you and talk to you. And if you have any questions, you ask me. Because going into Target, you will make mistakes just because you don't know any better. And I don't want you to fail, because I believe in you and what you're doing, and whether we ever acquire you or not, I need to see you succeed. So that relationship was key to there being a deal a year later. Yes.
First and foremost, I'd like to say namaste. I love your story. And when you were talking, I was like, this sounds like this should be a Super Soul Sunday story. But my parents own a business. They've been in business for about 16 years, and I worked with their business for about 10 years. And I recently branched out on my own with my own business. But the problem that I run into is everyone knows me from my parents' business, which I still promote and support, but I'm also actually doing my own thing. So what would you do or suggest that how do I get away, not completely, but how can I get people to know that I'm off on my own, doing my own thing now?
That's an interesting place to be. It's a very blessed place to be, because you have the experience of watching them build something and being a part of it. So you have all of that knowledge as you go out on your own. But I think you're going to know when the right time is. If you find that it's helpful to get your foot in the door, if you go in as the daughter of the person who helped to build, the person who was a part of, then you use that. For example, when we had celebrity investors in the beginning of the brand, it was helpful to get the brand exposure by using those names. So Glamour magazine maybe wouldn't have written about mango salt scrub before, but they wrote about it because Jada used it. And that meant that I got into those pages, and I didn't care that they wrote about Jada instead of me. The fact is that an ethnic brand was in those pages. Vogue magazine did a one-page article on Carol's daughter because we provided Jada to them for a picture and so forth. So for a while, I kind of lived behind the celebrities of the brand, but it got us into the doors we needed to get into. And then we pulled that away and pushed the product and pushed that story. So the time will reveal itself, but use it as you need it to get you in the door. Don't let your ego get in the way.
Thank you.
Okay, and this is our last question.
Mine might be the toughest.
Okay.
Because I know L'Oreal gets a lot of flack from being animal testing, but they have done a cruelty-free line. And I know your product is cruelty-free. So when you signed over the paperwork, did you say my product needs to remain cruelty-free, or did you have a choice in it? How do you deal with that? Because I have people that want me to cook something, but they want me to step outside of my box and use ingredients that aren't my brand.
Okay. L'Oreal actually does not do animal testing. Because L'Oreal is a global brand, so L'Oreal USA, let me clarify, L'Oreal USA does not do animal testing, and they are cruelty-free. But because they are a global brand and have offices and manufacturing in different countries, not every country follows the same rules that we follow. So I don't know the exact number. I've only heard of one thus far, so don't quote me. But I believe that there is one country where the animal testing is the only testing that is currently approved by the government to be used in this industry. So if you don't use it, then you're breaking the law. So the misconception is that everything is tested on animals and they're killing bunnies all over the place, which is actually not true. We're certified by PETA. We produce our own products. We don't go through L'Oreal's production yet. We probably won't until 2017, 2018, because integration takes a really long time. And the last thing that L'Oreal wants to do is what they comically refer to as L'Orealize Carol's daughter. So they want us to be independent as long as we possibly can be before we're folded completely into the system. But even when we're folded into the system with our ideals. So a company like Kiehl's that has a history very similar to Carol's daughter and a practice of making products very similar to Carol's daughter, a family-owned pharmacy business since the 1800s. They were acquired by L'Oreal 10 years ago, thriving, and they're still their own brand within that structure. So I won't be killing any bunnies, don't worry.
No, I'm not concerned about killing the bunnies because if someone else is going to do it, but because of my title, I have to remain with those cruelty-free products, and I want to make sure that if I promote it, it is.
It is cruelty-free, and it will continue to be so.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you for having me, and have a blessed rest of your day.
Let's give her one more round of applause, please. A Memphis round of applause, everybody. Thank you so much. Now, we have a gift for you before you leave, so we'll get that and make sure that we have that Memphis hospitality. We're going to try to stay on schedule, so we have our last two remarks. The mayor was not able to make it. He was at another event. He was scheduled to be here, but he wasn't able to make it, but he sends his greetings. He was here to welcome everybody this morning, and he's very pleased with what we have going on. So our last two remarks to tease the rest of the events that we have going on this evening. Everybody's excited about that. We've got two dynamic panels coming up immediately. Again, we're in the Nashville room as well as the Magnolia room downstairs. Our Shark Tank is coming up directly after that. That's been getting a lot of energy, so please stay around for that. And now we're going to hear from our last two speakers to tell us a little bit more about tomorrow.
Thank you. As I look around the room, I see a lot of women. And I get excited about that. Not just because I'm single, but because I'm the president of the United States Black Chamber of Commerce. Hold up. Understand this. Black America is in a really tough situation. On Monday and Tuesday, I was in Baltimore. Yesterday, I was in Kansas City, and I'm here today. Folk don't understand what's going on around the country to African Americans, but the U.S. Black Chamber is really here to discuss an issue related to business. We believe that business and an economic agenda can address many of the concerns that are going on around our country. As I listen to the speaker today and I look around the audience, I see that there are many business women here. And understand of the 1.9 million African American owned businesses that we own throughout this country, 1.1 million are women-owned businesses. And so women play an extremely important role in the next steps that we take. Understand this, the number one concern in our community is unemployment. Well, I just said that there's 1.9 owned African-American businesses in this country, but there's also 1.9 million unemployed African-Americans in this country. So simple math says that if I have each one of those businesses hire one African-American, we don't have an unemployment conversation in our community. The U.S. Black Chamber has 121 black chambers around the country. We're in 31 states. and we're based on 5 pillars, and I won't take a lot of your time, but I definitely want to make sure that you understand what we do. Because you see, in Washington, D.C., it's about advocacy. It's not about Democrats or Republicans. It's not about black or white or gay or straight. It's about representation. You see, on our tags, on the vehicles that we drive, it says taxation without representation. And ladies and gentlemen, that's who black businesses have been for many and many and many years. We've been paying into a system, believing in a system that has worked for America, but we've just not had anyone there representing our concerns. We do now. Our second pillar is access to capital, and I'm really excited to hear her story because she talked about starting her business with $100. If you ask any business owner, especially in this audience, what their #1 concern is, they will say access to capital to start, to grow, and expand their businesses. We partner with the SBA, and I know they're here this afternoon, but understand this. The SBA was created to help minority, disadvantaged, and women-owned businesses prosper. Part of what they have is a loan program. Most people, when they think about the SBA, they think that's where they can go and get money. Let me make this very, very clear. In 2012, of all the dollars that the SBA guaranteed, 8.65% of those went to African-American-owned businesses. In 2013, 1 year under a current president, those numbers dropped to 1.7%. I should have heard a lot more wows, because how are we going to start, grow, and expand our business if we can't get the capital that we need? The average loan that the SBA made in 2014 was $454,000. The average African-American-owned business in America today is $165,000, keeping less than $43,000 in profit. If we tripled our businesses, we would still not be a good loan to the SBA. So we have to do what's right by our own community. Our third pillar is contracting. And understand this, 95% of these people in this room will never have the opportunity to do business with the government or with corporate America. And the reason being, they will all tell us it's because of size and scale. I was very, very pleased to hear her story, and it's very similar to many of ours. We start a business, we grow our business, and many times we're forced to sell our businesses. But when we do that, we do lose a legacy. But the legacy is not about the businesses that we sell or that we grow, but it's about us doing business with us. The average African American, the folk that are in this room, spend less than 3% of their money with other black firms. In the Asian community, their dollar stays in their community 28 days. In the Hispanic community, their dollar stays in their community 21 days. In the black community, we get our checks, we run to the payday loan center, and we're running to the first white business we can find. Our dollar leaves our community within 6 hours. I want everybody to do me one favor right now. Pick up your smartphones. I know most of these folks in this room are technically equipped, and I want you to do me a huge favor and download a mobile app. It's called the USBC mobile app. There are 43,000 black-owned businesses there. I want you to make a conscious decision that your dollars matter. We understand Black Lives Matter, but it starts with black dollars mattering, and we can change that conversation. Our fourth one is entrepreneurial training. You see, I'm from Oakland, and I'm really happy to hear about the stories, because you see, I start each one of my conversations the very same way. My mother was a preacher and a teacher, so I know who my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ is, and I'm very well educated. So much so that I went to 2 HBCUs, Florida A&M undergrad, hold on, and I went to graduate school at Clark Atlanta University. But the fact of the matter is, half of the HBCUs will be closed in the next 15 years. More African Americans will graduate from the University of Phoenix in 2015 than all the HBCUs combined. Did I tell you my father was a Black Panther? So I know who my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ is, but I don't take no shit. And many of us have to understand that the conversations that are being had around the country are conversations where our voice is not being addressed. And what you have seen on TV these last few days that are happening in Baltimore and cities like Baltimore needs to continue to happen because we need to be able to have that dialogue. And our last pillar, and for those folk that are on the President's Circle that are in this room, will you please stand? I know I have a few of my members from around the country. These are some of the largest black businesses in the country. They represent our President's Circle. They came here this afternoon from Arizona, from Texas, from Florida to make sure that we are partnering with each other because we are the solution. We have voted, we have demonstrated, we have protested, but most importantly, we have to support one another. If we can grow our businesses, we can change our communities. I say this at each and every opportunity that I get. America is a great country. We love America. But in order for America to be strong, we need a strong black America. And the only way you can have a strong black America is by having strong black businesses. And the only way you can have strong black businesses is to have strong black chambers and black business associations. So I'm very pleased to be here. I'm excited about this afternoon, and I guarantee you if you come to our panels tomorrow morning, you will be motivated, entertained, as well as given education. Thank you very much.
That's my guy, y'all. That's Ron Busby. He's the president of the United States Black Chamber of Commerce. And he delivered the keynote at the Benny Awards a couple of years ago. As I left this morning, I spoke this morning and I did it in another 3 minutes, Gail Rose. I was the one person who did. And as I was leaving, someone asked me a question. And they asked me, say, well, are you optimistic about the mayor's plans? And I said, optimism, I'm optimistic. Optimism, I'm hopeful. Optimism is a little thin. Hope has to have a foundation. The foundation of our hope is our faith. And we know that faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things unseen. We also know this, that faith without works is? Yeah. You see, Pastor, we know something. I'm not going to preach today, and let me tell you what an active faith looks like, okay? Stand up, Ron Busby. A couple of years ago, he spoke at the Benny Awards. And after he didn't eat there and I didn't eat, well, you know, he's giving the keynote address, he didn't eat. I don't eat usually when I'm at our awards, I'm working. After I said, well, let's go get something to eat because you didn't eat. He said, okay. I said, how about some barbecue? Hey, I heard about y'all barbecue. I said, okay. There's a place called The Rendezvous. And he said, well, is it black owned? And that was a bit of a test for him, and I said, actually, it is not. So he said, well, I said, Andre and Ruth Pollard, here we come. And we dined at A&R down on 3rd Street. Had a great time. Now, appreciate this, folks. An active faith looks like that. An active faith, and I don't like to use myself as an example, but from the guy who shines my shoes to the person who represents me when I go to court, they look like me. Correction. I want everybody here to tell Carly McCullough that she looks, that I said that she looks a whole lot better than me, and nobody objected, and nobody said, not so fast now. Folks, tomorrow we are going to have something. Let me share this with you. What Alandis is doing here, what we're doing here is important. Tomorrow at the antecedent to the Benny Awards, at 8 o'clock in the morning, we're going to have a series of panel discussions regarding things that are important to minority and women-owned businesses. And it's going to be really flowing, and you need to be there because you're going to learn a few things, just like he said. It'll be a whole lot of knowledge. It'll be some edutainment as well, if you will. Education along with entertainment, because he got jokes. Please join us tomorrow. And I want to say this, if you did not know, tomorrow we're going to honor a legacy award, a gentleman who I love and admire so much. And it gives me a great deal of personal joy to say that we're going to acknowledge and recognize the legacy and the work of Mr. Clifford Stockton over the Chamber of Commerce. You can applaud for that. So come out tomorrow. What we're doing here is constructive engagement of the different organizations that support women and minority-owned businesses, and we are trying to make it work for you. We work, this lady here, stand up. You, yeah. This is my sister, and we work indefatigably to make sure that you are successful in your business. Help us out. Develop an active faith. An active faith means that you do business with somebody who looks like you. Now, from everything you do, you have a choice. You have a choice where you bank. You have a choice who you buy your insurance from. You have a choice where you do, every time you spend $1, put some eyeballs on your dollar. Hello? You heard what he said about, and you see, this is something that we have to be taught. Asians don't have to learn this. They know this when they come here. Hello? The Arabs don't have to learn this. They know this when they come here. East Indians don't have to learn this. They know this when they come here. We are the ones who were lynched and taught to unlike each other. That was the prescription for our continued failure. We have to write a new prescription, an antidote for that particular prescription that Willie Lynch gave in 1712. Are you paying attention to me? And we can write that prescription. Are you with me? Join us tomorrow. Join us tomorrow. I got my coat pull. I can't preach behind that prayer. Join us tomorrow, 8 o'clock in the morning. The Billy Awards are 11:30. We'll see you tomorrow. God bless you. Stay tuned this afternoon. You got some wonderful programs. I love you.
Thank you so much again. Our classes will start so we can start on time for our evening sessions. Thank you.